Hi, I'm Mauro Porcini, PepsiCo's Chief Design Officer. Join me for our new series where we dive into the minds of the greatest innovators of our time, with the goal of finding what drives them in their professional journey and in their personal life, trying to uncover the universal truths that unite anyone attempting to have a meaningful impact in the world. This is In Your Shoes. A design-led or design-centered organization differs from an organization in which design is not considered a strategic asset on two levels. From an organization structure's perspective, it has a senior-level design executive who sits on the company or organization leadership team or reports into that team, has the requisite budgets, and has a diverse group of experienced designers as part of the design team. From a cultural and behavioral standpoint, people in the broader organization embrace design and collaborate well across functional boundaries, are empathic thinkers, and recognize that everything they do is centered around their customers and leads to meaningful solutions that drive value for the organization. I'm quoting the guest of today. She's the president of the Design Management Institute and has served on both the advisory council and the current board of directors. Under her leadership, a variety of very valuable programs were initiated. The MI Design Value Awards, for instance, the MI Student Essay Competition, the MI Diversity in Design Manifesto conference and publication issue dedicated to diversity. Previously, she served as the President of Strategic Change and Innovation, as well as VP of Global Design and Usability and Technology Support Operations at Pitney Bowes. And before that, she worked at the Eastman Kodak Company as a worldwide product manager. Over the years, she's been very active in the nonprofit sector and is a frequent speaker at conferences and symposia worldwide. Carole Bilson, welcome to In Your Shoes. Hi, Carole.
Thank you. Hi, Mauro.
It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. We've been knowing each other for a few years now. I have
Yes.
the honor of sitting on the board of the organization that you lead, that you chair, that you drive with passion, with knowledge, that is the Design Management Institute. Can you tell us more about what is the Design Management Institute and what does the president of the Design Management Institute does?
Sure. The Design Management Institute is a global nonprofit organization for design managers, executives, and leaders, people that are focused on design and innovation in general. And we provide a platform for people to connect, to share ideas, to support one another. So it's just a great laboratory, if you would say, of design leaders and thinkers around the world.
How does it differ from other organizations like IDSA, IAGA? What is the difference of DMI?
Well, I've been a long time member of IDSA, so I know the difference, but I can't speak to the others. I would say that, we're global, and DMI has existed for 45 years. The founder, Bill Hannon, had this great vision. And from the very day the organization started, it had an international focus. It has never been a US only organization. And that continues today. So I would say that's a huge differentiator. We're a leader globally. We have the largest community. Our digital community is 30,000 people in 60 countries. And also, a lot of our members are either managers, business owners, executives. They're heads of design and innovation. And certainly, anyone can be a part of this community. You do not have to be the head of a design or innovation organization. And certainly, younger people who aspire to these roles, we welcome and encourage them to become a part of the organization.
Yeah, so it's international, and then there is this strategic component, this management component. I One of the reasons why already as a young manager, I really loved the DMI was this idea of connection between the world of design and creatives and the world of business, the world of companies. And, I was at 3M and I was trying to build that kind of connection between the two worlds. And I always found in DMI a wonderful platform to learn about that connection, how to build that connection, listening to the experiences of so many other people that were facing the same kind of challenges. Do you agree? I mean, is that something that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I was a member of DMI for 14 years or so before became president. And what I loved about DMI was the opportunity to come when the meetings were held in Cape Cod. It was just a nice environment to meet people from all different industries and, in a casual setting, and just the energy and the exchange. The people are just so approachable, and I met so many interesting people. I learned a tremendous amount. I built networks. And so, if you're a manager or a leader in your organization, it's very, very helpful to have, peers all over the world that you can call on at any moment, for advice, for ideas, for collaboration. And so I would say that's probably one of the most important qualities of our organization, is that that when you come to a DMI conference, you're going to meet some very interesting, impressive, knowledgeable people that are very giving, very down to earth, and very willing to share their knowledge.
And with DMI, you've been, as I said earlier, you've been initiating a variety of different programs and initiatives and awards. One that is very interesting is the Design Value Awards. We are surrounded by so many awards that celebrate often brands and products that sell nothing. They are beautiful, beautiful, but they nobody has access to them, so they cannot really add value, not just to the companies that produce them and launch them, but even to the society. That where
Right.
if you create something amazing and nobody can use it because you don't sell a piece of it, then it can be amazing and beautiful, but it misses its intent, its purpose. So why did you create this Design Value Award? What is the meaning of it? What kind of message are you trying to give to the world through this award?
Well, first of all, I should say that the seed of the idea came with my predecessor, Michael Westcott, who passed away, because he initiated the Design Value Index, and I was on the team that did the initial work. And so it really was an extension of what he began. I realized that so many people look to DMI as a leader. We're a trusted brand. People view the work that we do as, high quality work. So it was just a natural extension. And so, working with a team of people, board members and others, we came up with this idea to have this Design Value Awards. And the point of these awards is they should deliver value to either business, society, culture. And we seek teams that work across boundaries, because that's really one of the biggest challenges, having worked and led a couple of design organizations. One of the things that I learned is that it's very difficult to work across boundaries, and those boundaries can be within your own company, or they could be boundaries from your company to an external company. And the second reason for having these Design Value Awards, not only to recognize people out there in the world doing incredible things, but also it's a great way to communicate with non-designers. So when people win an award, and winning is everything from honorable mention, third, second, first place. Everybody's a winner. And when you become a winner, we put together a story. Basically, it's your story that you submitted, and we published them in our fourth quarter magazine. It's a full color magazine called the DMI Review. And so you have all these incredible stories of teams that have collaborated across boundaries. There's always a designer innovation component to it, excuse me, but they'd be working with people from other parts of the organization, or people from different companies. So, for example, you could have a foundation, you could have a university, you could have a company or a business or a consulting firm, and they work together to solve a problem or to invent something new or different. And, just having to work across boundaries, that stretch, and then delivering value. So that's really how the whole thing came to pass. And, it's part of the whole design value system, I would say.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's so important to have companies and the business community understanding the value that design can create, and have organizations like DMI platforms that can really tell the world about this value and amplify as much as possible the value that design is creating today already in these companies is really priceless. It's so important for all of us.
Exactly. And Mauro, if I could just give you a couple of examples.
Please.
For example, one winner was a nurses service in West Africa, in Ghana, working with a foundation in Australia. And then I believe there was a group at Harvard, that was Harvard University in Boston, that was involved. So you had three parties working on this digital solution, to leapfrog traditional phone technology so they could communicate easily in cities and remote areas. And it was a health solution for the nurses. Another example was an engineer in California working with setting up a company in India to create modern rooftops. And, the traditional rooftops are made of tin or metal, and they're very noisy. So if you have birds or animals walking across the rooftop, it's so noisy. And also, it generates so much heat. It's already very hot there. And so you have, these challenges. So this company they created this company called Mod Roof, MOD Roof. And essentially, they created these really inexpensive tiles of natural materials that can be very easily put together and don't require sophisticated equipment, and they're relatively inexpensive. So many people now can have an improved lifestyle because you don't have this noisy roof and you don't have all the heat coming off of the roof. So those are just a couple of examples, and we have so many. Obviously, once the judges are done judging, we get a chance to produce stories out of them. We share the stories at a celebration. We share them online. We share them on the DMI website, and we also put them in our fourth quarter magazine. We dedicate that issue to sharing those stories. So I would encourage anybody who wants to learn more about design and innovation, and what do people who participate in DMI do, just get access to that fourth quarter magazine. You can get it on our website at dmi.org, and you can read so many stories. I believe we're in our fifth or sixth year now, so it's going strong.
And well, I want to even reinforce the message you just shared. I would encourage all the non-designers listening to us to read that magazine, because you share two examples that for any designer are normal examples of design. But I'm sure that many people listening to us right now are thinking, wait a second, but is that design? That's innovation, or that's, entrepreneurship, and that's what design is about. The story you share, you didn't use once the word aesthetic or style or things that usually are associated to the word of design. And for us designers, we know that. That's what we study, that's what we do. But often you go in companies that don't understand this. They expect designers to work on the aesthetic of something, on the graphic of something, on the form of something, and not on what they call innovation. But in reality, we call design, are really two powerful examples of what design really is. And I think reading the magazine, the fourth quarter issue of the magazine, will help many people to better understand what design really is.
Absolutely. I mean, designers can touch systems, user customer experience, service design. I think what happens is you start out as a designer, and as you work on projects and you build your skills and your knowledge over time, when you become a manager, that's when you can really kick things into high gear. That's when you start thinking very broadly, strategically. And so designers can have a tremendous impact, especially if they are involved from the outset of a project or an initiative. And so I really call it, it's a higher order level of thinking. Designers have a very keen sense of observation and listening and empathy. And so, coupled with your educational background and all your practical work experience, you build up this knowledge, this base of knowledge. And also, designers work collaboratively. I mean, a lot of design groups, you'll have several functions working collaboratively. So you would have, industrial design, interactive design, visual design, human factors engineering, information architecture. I mean, you have about 5 to 8 disciplines that work together collaboratively that people would call, the design department or the design organization. So it's not just one type of design. And by working collaboratively, it can produce very powerful results.
I totally agree. And in these years in DMI, you have been driving another initiative that is very close to our hearts. It is we've been putting a lot of effort here in PepsiCo in that territory. That is the territory of diversity. The diversity in design manifesto, the conference, the publication, the awards, is something you have been driving. And if we think about who you represent, what you did, you have been one of the very first women and African American women to lead a global design organization. This is already by itself an achievement that you represent. And by the way, congratulations for being
Thank
able
you.
to achieve something like this. So you had this particular sensitivity for a topic that today, in the past few weeks and months, with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything is happening, especially in the United States, became even more on the top of any conversation that is going on in the planet, not just in America. Can you tell us more about the diversity initiatives of the MI, but also about your vision, your experience, and what you think design can do to help in the diversity area?
Wow. Well, yeah, that's a big topic, and the reason why I have such passion for these initiatives in DMI is because of my own experiences. It was very challenging. I mean, it's challenging to become the head of anything. The career path, the challenges you have to overcome. But when you're a woman and you're African American, you're truly, it was a very lonely path. I mean, being a designer was fun, it was exciting, it was challenging. But once you trying to break into management was not easy for me. And, if you had a day, I could tell you stories, but I'm going to try to fast forward. So, I had an excellent art teacher in high school. I had a fantastic design professor in college. And it wasn't until I got into the work world that it was like somebody just threw, blocks of ice at me. It was just so different. I mean, it was challenging to be the only woman. And, it's not just symbolic. It really is when you're in an environment where you see people that look like you feel like you can aspire to do what they do. You might feel more comfortable approaching them to ask questions. So, it was a fairly lonely path. I mean, when I started working, I was the youngest person in the department. I was the only woman industrial designer, and I was the only African American in the department. And there were no other women in the department for at least probably, I don't know, 8, 9 years. In fact, I used to work on a lot of projects with engineers and other disciplines. And I remember distinctly, I worked for 7 years as an industrial designer before I was on a team with other women. The lead engineer was a woman, and the human factor specialist was a woman. And the three of us noticed it. So, I want to fast forward that to, when I became a manager and eventually started having the ability to influence other people's lives. I really made it a point to try to diversify my teams. And if you put a focus on something, you can make it happen. I mean, it's not easy because there are a limited number of women and people of color studying design, specifically industrial design. And so it's the whole pipeline. There are challenges all the way. I mean, I think that more kids from K through 12 should be exposed to design and innovation. And there are pockets of initiatives around the country, but there's so few. For a country that has delivered so much invention and innovation over centuries, I mean, the United States is heralded and admired for the innovation. However, we could do more. And I think that there's a real opportunity for a huge chunk of the population, women and people of color, to get more into design and innovation. So that's where I think the design world can help. So now we move it to the management level in DMI. So, with the support of the board, and at the time, Jerry Kathman was the board chair. He was also the CEO of LPK, and he was extremely excited about, launching a diversity initiative. And so, for the first time, I felt so supported and encouraged to pursue something that, is so important to me. So LPK, along with Procter and Gamble, supported us to put on our first diversity conference. And so we started it 3 years ago. And honestly, when I sat to think about, who might come, of course, the conference is for everybody. It's for people of all cultures and all races. But I wanted to focus on making sure that we got women and people of color to come to the conference. So I literally had to roll up my sleeves and just call people. I created a list of maybe 10 designers, and I just said, okay, who do you know? Who do you know? Who do you know? And gradually, I think the first year we might have had somewhere around 60 or 70 attendees. And then our second year, we had 100 attendees. And it takes time because, you need to let people know you're here. And of course, DMI, our mission is about managers and executives, but also we're trying to cultivate the next generation. We're trying to build a pipeline. So, we can be a place, an environment for women and people of color who aspire to become design or innovation leaders. They can come to our organization, to our conference, to meet other people who have walked that path and who have accomplished things and who have reached levels of leadership that they would like to achieve. And they can talk to them, and they can build networks, and they can seek mentors. So it's a slow building process, but I have started a number of initiatives in my career. So I know that change is not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. And you just have to be passionate, and you have to stick to it. So, I'm very excited. I mean, this year was our third year. We had to do it all virtual. So that was a huge challenge. However, we were able to expand the network, bring in some new faces and have more conversation. We had a career development workshop. And so it's exciting. It feeds my soul. And, even if one person contacts me and says, wow, I'm so glad I attended. I learned so much. I met some new people. I'd like to get in touch with this person. So it's really all about, giving back. I've had a wonderful career. I've had many challenges, but, I'm a persistent person. So,
You are.
challenges don't stop me.
It's such a beautiful story, and really, especially this last part of the giving back is so precious, because many people do achieve, they reach their dreams and they become whatever they want to become, but then they forget to give back and to help others, and instead is you made it a part of the purpose of your life, the mission of your life, and
Yeah.
this is
Well,
beautiful.
Mauro, I've been giving back my whole career. When I started working right out of college, I joined organizations to volunteer, and that's really how I got a lot of my leadership development experience, not from the companies. I got it from volunteering in not-for-profit civic organizations, whether it was, the Rochester Women's Network, or whether it was, Network North Star, which was an African American network that we started at Kodak. Five of us started. So, there have been a number of initiatives and projects I've started along the way, and I have gained so much leadership experience. So once I became a manager, I had already had so much experience, leading teams with no authority, working with difficult people, working with limited resources. So you learn all these things that you can bring to bear to the workforce.
What would be the advice that you will give to PepsiCo, to myself, to our team, to really accelerate even more our investments in diversity, to find more diverse people, to attract them, to engage them? So any kind of suggestion, advice that you may have, from really finding them, where do we find more diverse people, all the way. For instance, the IGA census of 2018 told us that there are just 3% of black people in the design community in the United States. Is what exactly what you said earlier. The number is not very high, but they're there. They are, 3% is still a number. So how do we find them? Where do we find? And then how can we make sure that they find the right environment when they enter these companies, that they get engaged, that that there are not bias that eventually are even
Well,
bias that we don't are not aware of.
I mean, you basically have to start from within. So, you as the leader, and any African Americans or people of color, women in your organization that you view as, role models or doing great things, you have to bring them out. You have to have them engage in the broader community. And you really should go back to the colleges, because, with the resources of a company like PepsiCo, you could actually highlight certain colleges and have a focused effort, and encourage designers of color to study design, or to make sure that they continue their studies and offer them summer internships. Because I remember when I was in college, there were probably three other African American designers. There was an interior designer, a graphic designer, and one other industrial designer other than myself. And as far as I know, I don't think any of them found jobs in design, maybe one for a little bit. And I think there are many obstacles. Some of them are financial. First of all, they have to select design. And, in the broader community, people, parents and families have a view of what is a lucrative career. Lawyer, doctor, engineer. Nobody thinks of designer. And, we have fantastic careers. Not only is the work so interesting, it's meaningful, it feeds your soul, and you get paid to do it. And if you advance, you make just as much as anybody out there. Actually, you can even make more. So I think from a communication standpoint, I don't think a lot of parents and family, first of all, understand, especially in the minority communities, that designer is a very lucrative career and you can go in so many directions. As I mentioned, whether it's visual design or industrial design or interactive design. So there's the college level, hiring students in the summer, giving them meaningful experience so that when they graduate, they're positioned for those good jobs. Then the second thing is, once you've gotten them through college and they graduated and they get hired, then it's the environment. It's extremely important to have buddies. You can call them a sponsor, mentor, whatever, but they have to have an internal sponsor or mentor because they're going to experience so many challenges that you can't even imagine, and they probably won't tell you. So, it's one thing to get them in the door, it's another thing to keep them. So, they really need a good support system. And, when I think about my career, when I started, I didn't have any mentors and it was a struggle. I mean, I was the only woman in an all male department, and a lot of the guys were at least 20 years older than me. So, there was a generational divide. We didn't have anything in common other than the work. And I was the junior person, and a lot of times people have these attitudes. They think that you're there because of a quota system. And I can't tell you how many people would ask me for the first 5 years, you're the designer? So you're going to make the decision on this design? You're the person making the decision? And I'm like, yeah, and then they want to know, did you go to school for this? Yes, I went to school for this. I have a college degree. So you would just not imagine the dumb questions. And the thing is, you have to be, you can't overreact. You have to take it in stride. You have to tolerate a lot of stuff. You just have to remind yourself that, they're ignorant because they haven't been exposed to people like me. And so they don't realize, that it's a lucrative career and it's a degree in college and it is a career. And, and yes, people of color and women can have these roles because let's face it, as an industrial designer on a project, you have a lot of influence. And so, that's why I'd get these kind of questions. So it wasn't until I had been working for about 7 or 8 years and we started an employee network at the company. And the employee network was really to provide a support system for African American employees. And it really happened organically because a reporter from the local newspaper asked one of the Black employees, was there a glass ceiling at the company? And so before the employee talked to the journalist, she called a meeting at her house and invited 6 other people. And I wasn't at that meeting, but they decided they were not going to talk to the journalist because they were afraid that whatever they said might not get accurately communicated. So what they did was they said, gee, this was so much fun. We got to talk to each other and meet each other from different parts of the company. Why don't we call a meeting? So they called a meeting at a community center and 100 people showed up. And I was one of the 100 people. And so after a few months, 5 of us got together and we wrote the bylaws for the organization. We hired a lawyer and we brought in some very key senior people in the company, especially in human resources, because the company was a non-union company and you were not allowed to organize. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear that our purpose was to be supportive of the company while supporting each other to enhance and advance our careers. So after forming that organization, I developed so many contacts and relationships with people that I had never met. And the company was so huge there were 6 locations in the city alone, not to mention all the international locations. So it was the first time in my career, after 7 or 8 years, where I got to meet women and African American men and women role models. And so my first real mentor came from that experience. Now, my mentors, I had several mentors, and they were, mostly men because I worked around mostly men. And also, I had white mentors as well. So I had a mixture of mentors. There was one black woman who was the highest ranking executive. She reported to the chief human resource officer. And she tried for years to get me into HR because she thought I had so many great ideas for HR. And I was very honored and flattered, but I said, hey, I love design and I have a lot to do in design. So that's really when I first started to develop role models. And honestly, I think my career would have moved along a lot faster had I had role models early on. But it is so critical. I mean, would not be where I am today. It's a combination of persistence, hard work, delivering results, and then having a support system. And that's so important because you can run around and find people, but you want to make sure they have meaningful career and that they stay, because the amount of money and energy is going to cost you to bring them in. You don't want them to leave after a short amount of time because of antibodies that might build up internally that you might not be aware of.
It's such a beautiful story of connection, of empathy, of love. You didn't talk about divisions and walls and us versus them. Your mentors were diverse themselves. It's really beautiful the way you've been telling this story, and I totally agree. I think it's really about dialogue and respect, mutual dialogue and respect, and and together all together with all our different backgrounds, we can really build something important and drive progress in this society. um, in these years you have been interacting with so many different people and managers and companies through DMI. uh, what do you think has been changing in the past 10 years in the world, in society, and then especially now with COVID? How is the world changing? Do you see some trends that are particularly relevant, the way people connect, the way they communicate with each other, the what they eat, what they drink, what they do, even the way you're running DMI, the way you're organizing the conferences, obviously right now has been impacted. How do you see the future of all of this? The connection of people, the creation of brands, the society in general. What do you think is been changing for years, and now COVID is eventually accelerating even more?
Wow, that's a tough question because we ask people that a lot. Um, I guess really, I think there are segments that do certain things a certain way. So, for example, you have a lot of large consulting firms, accounting, investment firms that have been buying up a lot of top or highly visible design consultancies. So, in terms of the design world, there's been a big shift. There are not as many independent, solo, small design firms. They're all getting snapped up, bought up by a lot of these big companies. And, it's still, that has been going on for the last, 5, 6 years or so. So the jury is still out on that because, now that COVID has hit, some companies are starting to lay off and cut designers, that snapped up these, large groups. So, COVID, I mean, whenever you have these disruptions, people really think that dramatic change is coming and we're going to be doing things differently. And I obviously, I can't read a crystal ball, but what I can say about change is that I think it depends how long this pandemic lasts. Because, from everything I've read and experienced, when people experience a crisis or a major challenge, they'll change momentarily or temporarily. But then when things go back, I don't want to say normal, but almost normal, people go back to their old ways. I mean, change is difficult. So I really think a lot of it has to do with how long this is going to last. Clearly, this video collaboration revolution has taken hold. I mean, even me, you know, we
You
have our
were
own platform.
supposed to come to the studio. You remember we had to change our plans and to the
That's
design
right.
center. And finally we're doing it in digital, in a digital way. Yes, yes.
That's right. That's right. And I've never loved to turn on the camera. I mean, I would talk to people audio. So for me, this is a big change. I'm on a lot of video chats now, and DMI has always been doing webcasts. We just generally focus on the material and the slides, but we're now starting to do a combination.
How do you
So
feel? Many people are changing behavior right now. They're forcing themselves to do things differently. And then they realize that actually they're enjoying that, both socially in their personal life and in their professional life. How is it for you? Are you enjoying it? Something that you were not used to or you didn't want to do before? Or you're doing it just because you have to, but it's not really your thing?
Well, I really miss the people. I really miss gathering with people. I love people. And DMI conferences are so powerful and so engaging. And so I really miss that. As far as working from home, I was working from home about 60% of the time before. So that part has not changed. It's just psychologically, sometimes I think about it, I'm like, I'd like to get up and go to the office in Boston. Well, I can't go. I'm not going to get on a plane. So, from that standpoint, there's a psychological restriction that comes through my mind, every few days. I mean, it's not a constant thing. I've become fairly disciplined, and I'm married to my laptop, and I'm very much into the work. It's so interesting. But yes, I do really miss, getting together with people. So, these, digital video chats are kind of a half step. It's a nice way to interact with people. It's not quite the same as in person. So, I mean, in terms of personal, there obviously has been a lot of adjustment because, I used to be working from home and had the whole territory to myself. And now I'm sharing it with family members. And, so we've all had to go through some adjustment.
Yeah.
And, fortunately, I live in an area where, the numbers of people hospitalized is low. So, I'm still very nervous about the whole thing. So, and I'm very cautious. But I limit where I go, and I obviously, distance and wear the mask and all of that. But I love gardening as well. So,
Nice.
I that's a great outlet for me. So early in the morning and in the evening, I'm out there watering and observing what's growing, and so I'm excited. I have a Japanese eggplant that I planted for the first time, and it's growing like gangbusters. So I'm excited.
I'm the same. I'm planting things, and I love to even just see them grow, day by day.
Yes. Yes, I
It's
mean, even pre-pandemic, I mean, when I back out of the driveway, I like to glance back and see what's growing today. It's just so gratifying. I plant, flowers, vegetables, and herbs, And so it's yeah, and it's something I've loved since I was a kid.
You know,
You
I
know,
didn't know this, and you now I'm gonna tell you something that you're gonna remember for sure. You remember at the board meeting of the DMI in Boston last year in September, I show up with my tomatoes that I took from the
yes,
garden, and we ate all
yes,
together the tomatoes at the end of the meeting. So we share the
they
same
were
passion.
they were fantastic, and I do grow tomatoes, although mine don't haven't quite looked as good as yours did, and it's probably because I grow them in pots. So
Oh yeah.
I just ordered raised beds. So I'm about to transplant. So I'm hoping that I can can show off some of my tomatoes to you in
Nice.
another month or two. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
fantastic.
they are so you put them on the ground and they do everything by themselves. So I didn't do
Yep.
much. They just
You didn't? You don't water them?
no, I not even. Well, I mean, I have an irrigation system, so they get their water. They get their water.
Ah, I do it the old fashioned way.
That's the best. One last question: what inspires Carole Bilson, and how do you inspire others?
Wow, what inspires me? Well, a number of things. I mean, family, design, creativity, um, gardening. I just find that the more you put yourself out there, your life becomes so rich and you get so much back. And I learned this, very early when I got out of college and I started volunteering in the community. I would just get so excited because, the more you interact with people, whether it's, creating a wonderful design or whether it's gardening in the garden or whether it's volunteering to help, kids on the weekend in, science or design or innovation, you just get so much back. And that's what inspires me. I mean, from the time when I was young and I discovered that I had the ability to draw, and I knew, I knew by the time I was in college I wanted to be a designer. I mean, I knew I wanted to be in a creative field at a young age, but I didn't have the right influences, at the grade school level. It wasn't until I got to high school that I had a fantastic art teacher. And so, it's really just making everything around us, inspires me, So it's there's no one thing really, and it all informs, your creativity, your thinking, reading, talking to people, having quiet time, traveling. I mean, it's just so many things I get inspiration from.
Wonderful. Well, Carol, thank you so much for sharing with
You're
us your
welcome.
ideas in today,
You're welcome.
and thank you also for everything you are doing through the platform of DMI. First of all, as a designer, thank you for how you're pushing the role of design in the world of business, and then for the new initiatives to help minorities, to help the new generations, the younger people, to have a seat at the table and to have opportunities in this world. This is really priceless. And so thank you for everything you are doing. And
Thank you,
thank you.
Mauro. And I hope if there's anyone out there listening, come join us. We need more people in our community. You don't
Exactly.
have to be a designer. Thank you,
Fantastic.
Mauro.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol.